What is going on, Hive Warriors? So today we're going to talk about the top 2 reasons why people fail with intermittent fasting. Now, without any further ado, let's just jump right into it. Reason number 1, you are simply overeating. Now, this is where the clash happens between so many different people that believe in intermittent fasting over caloric restriction, in the sense that caloric restriction in and of itself does not matter. But the truth is that it actually does matter. If you are fasting, for example, doing the 16-8 and fasting for 16 hours, eating for 8 hours, but you're still overeating, meaning that you are going above your caloric maintenance level and you are on a net positive energy balance, what will happen is, although there are moments throughout the day where you are burning fat during the times when you're fasting, for example, there's going to be moments where you are storing fat and you're going to end up with a net positive, meaning that you will have stored more than you had burned, because you gave your body energy and then some to ensure that it can overcome the amount of energy that was lost throughout the day. Yes, intermittent fasting helps you partition body fat for fuel, but if you are in a caloric surplus, you will not burn more than you store throughout the day. If you're not counting your calories, but you're also not losing weight with intermittent fasting, it is possible that you could also be overeating. And that is something that you will have to control to ensure that moving forward, you are actually tapping into the benefits of intermittent fasting when it comes to weight loss. I'm sorry to burst a lot of people's bubbles out there that want it to be where intermittent fasting supersedes caloric restriction, but it doesn't. Does intermittent fasting have benefits over just caloric restriction? Of course it does, but that's the key word. Just caloric restriction, not caloric restriction on its own, because you still have to apply caloric restriction with intermittent fasting. Many people lose weight. Sometimes you actually lose weight when you first start doing intermittent fasting without technically paying attention to the calorie intake, but because you are no longer grazing, because you have a shorter window to eat, you actually create a scenario where you're eating below your caloric limit. But just because you are not paying attention to it doesn't mean that calorie restriction isn't taking place. Those are two different things. You are still at a net negative energy balance. You're just simply not paying attention to it. And that can mess people up in the beginning if they hit a plateau at a certain point. You have to understand how much calories you are taking in. If not, you will fail at intermittent fasting. Now let's go ahead and move on to number 2. Going way too hard with your intermittent fasting regimen. I can't tell you how many times I see in the comment section or in my DMs or when people communicate with me in person and they tell me, oh man, 20 hours is for softies. I do 27 hours. Man, you know what? 27 hours is for people that they can't tough it out. I do 32 hours. You know what? 32 hours is for people that they don't really got it in them. I do 42 hours. That rhetoric could be pretty concerning to the overall mission of sustainability, because it's all about put yourself through this tough thing so that you could if you're tough as nails, then you'll be able to show that and that makes sure that you're going through these trials and tribulations to try to No, that's not what it is. Yes, there's a power through element. Yes, there's a mental fortitude element to it, because you're changing the habit of the way that you eat. And that is not easy for a lot of people to do, which is why we have so many people that are overweight, especially here in the United States. It's not an easy thing to do. So what you want to do is not try to find the thing that makes your life miserable so that you can prove that you're tough enough to, to push through this intermittent fasting system. You want to find the intermittent fasting regimen that makes sense to you, that feels good for you. Is 20 hours good for you? Is 16 hours good for you? The whole mentality of let me go harder and harder to prove how tough I am and how much I want to do this thing better than others, or how much I want to do it and prove it to myself that like I'm gonna go through this hardship because that's too easy. 16 hours is too easy. 20 hours is too easy. 24 hours is too easy. You're actually setting yourself up for failure. If you go into the thing where you feel like you're consistently challenging yourself, it's going to take its toll after a certain period of time, and you may fall off without even knowing it in a few months' time, or even in a year. Even if it happens in a year or 2 years, that's unsuccessful because you want to stay within the regimen forever so that you're consistently keeping yourself at a healthy weight, consistently eating with a healthy pace, consistently eating foods that facilitate health in terms of building muscle, in terms of giving yourself fiber, giving yourself things that your body needs, the macronutrients, the nutrition, the micronutrients, all of those different things that your body requires. Doing that stuff, you want to do that for the long term, for the long haul. You don't want to do it in the short term. So I get that there's a romanticization. I'm sorry, I couldn't say that word. I get that there's that, but you have to understand what's the thing that you actually truly believe you can do without having to alter, without having to stop, without having to pause so much, so that you can consistently do this thing. And not just that, but do it for the long term. Do it forever. Find a thing to do as a lifestyle change, not a thing to do to show how aggressive you are. That's why I'm not necessarily a fan of all those super prolonged fasting regimens, like 15 days without eating, or 20 something days without eating, because those are quick fixes that are unsustainable. You're not going to be able to constantly replicate them. They're not going to be healthy to consistently replicate. So it's one of those things where you don't pick the hardest, toughest thing just to prove that you're the hardest, toughest intermittent faster. Pick the thing that's going to work for you. Trust me, I've seen people in person come to me and be like, man, you're the intermittent fasting guy. You talk about it and you only do 20 hours of fasting, man. That's nothing. I do 48 hours every single time. So basically they don't eat for 2 days at a time, and then they eat. And then months later, I talk to them, and then I'm like, hey, how's the 48-hour fasting going? It's like, are you changing times or anything? They're like, oh man, I stopped doing that, man. I couldn't keep doing it. Like, I was going out with my family, and then it's like, oh, well, what happened to this aggressive kind of thing that you were talking about? Because I'm still doing 20 hours of fasting, and I've been doing this since 2013, and you only just last year told me about it. So you have to be very cognizant of that system. You have to make sure that you're picking the thing that works for you and that you feel you can keep doing, not what you think is challenging you every single time that you do it. Like, oh, I have to switch to this one because this one's the challenging one. You don't want to constantly challenge yourself. You want to get into a groove. All right. Hopefully this video has helped you guys. And of course, as always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. This is Fledge Fitness, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out, guys.